So yeah, look, what are we going to talk about in 30, 40 minutes? Essentially, how did I get to this point? How did I get to being a CISO at a tech company? Bit of a deep dive into what a CISO role looks like, because I guess people have got different perceptions of what that may or may not be. A bit about how I strategize and deliver work. Might not be pertinent to the students in the room, but it will give you an idea of how I think about security at the highest level of a leading company. And hopefully some tips that you can take away. And then I'll try my best on Q&A if anyone's got any questions. So let's get going. Right. I did my GCSEs at a grammar school in England, and I moved back to Scotland where my parents were from to do my hires. And then I got the hell out of school. I didn't want to go to uni. And I joined the Royal Bank of Scotland as a 17-year-old as a mainframe or trainee mainframe developer. And I'll be impressed if anybody in the room has ever written this stuff. This is COBOL, which I started writing in 1998, one person there, 2 people. Oh wow, you're worth a fortune if you can still code it. I spent about 12 years at RBS, so in my late 20s. And I think it's safe to say that I wasn't very good. And the reason I wasn't very good is because this picture up here is I used to DJ the weekends. I worked in dance music for about 12 years, for about the same time, funnily enough. So I would do my 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then I would go out partying at the weekends, or I'd DJ, go clubbing, travel, and then get back to my desk on a Monday, bleary-eyed, desperately trying to keep hold of my employment. And I had a bloody great time. My 20s were a blast, and I wouldn't advise people to do what I've done, right? But I didn't have any career aspirations until I was in my 30s, frankly. My job was something that paid for my weekends. It paid for me to see my friends and play records to people in sweaty nightclubs. What that has done, I guess, is given me a whole stack of life experience that I may not have got otherwise. So it's difficult for me to talk about early stage careers because I didn't have one until I was in my 30s. After 12 years I got offered redundancy just as the financial crash was kicking in at the 2009, 2010, and in my infinite wisdom I thought the right thing to do would be to take that, take the money and run. And I spent a year working in the music industry. When I say working, I was pretty diligent for about 6 months, and then partied the rest of the money away, shall we say. I don't know if I'd make that decision again, but what it did was it transitioned me from the banking sector into the tech sector. I spent a year in music, and then I came, desperately crawling back to a real job, and I joined the train line, not in security. I joined as a tech support analyst. But through that job, I got asked to do security. The security person left, and I was asked to take that role on. And that whole year was just a life-changing thing because I'm still doing security now. I got the bug for it, and it put me on the trajectory that I'm on now. So it's really weird for me to kind of look back on decisions that I've made around taking time out of work, frankly losing quite a lot of money that could have been better spent somewhere else, leaving a good job that I had, albeit didn't really enjoy. But all those decisions have sort of led to this point, I think. So I did 3 years at the train line. I had a great time. I did lots of PCI compliance, started to learn all about security. I did a Security Plus course, really got the bug for it. And then in end of 2014, I was interviewing for 2 places. A free beer for anybody who knows what the top left one is.
MI5. MI5.
It's MI5, yeah. I got to the last interview to join MI5, and that's Skyscanner on Lauriston Place in Edinburgh. And me and my wife sat down one night with 2 pieces of paper, and we weighed up MI5, stay in London, Skyscanner, go to Edinburgh. And it was just chalk and cheese, so I took the Skyscanner job. So I could have had a very different sort of world into the sneaky stuff, which weirdly my father used to do. So there's a kind of common theme in my career of trajectories could have gone in such different ways depending on certain decisions, and sometimes you're not quite sure what the right thing to do is. So I did 3 great years at Skyscanner. That was my biggest learning curve. I look back on those years and I just didn't know what I was doing. I sort of faked it till I made it, I guess, to a certain extent. But it was a great company, great tech stack, great cultural organisation. Felt very lucky actually to work for that company. It's probably propelled me to where I am today. I then took a couple of leaps into a couple of other companies. Capital One, which was a big bank in the States, albeit running out of AWS, which I was fascinated by, to see a bank of that size running fully cloud. And it just didn't work out. It was too slow for me. It was too kind of clunky, too regulated, obviously, as you'd expect off a big financial organisation. I then took another leap into another company called Photobox, where I had a terrible time. I'm afraid some of my advice tonight will be that sometimes you take these leaps of faith and they don't work out, right? But sometimes you've got to take them because you'll never know. You still learn from those experiences. The jobs that I've taken that haven't worked out, I've learned as much from as the ones that went well. And I don't want the story of my career to suggest that it's all been successful. It hasn't. Some of it's been an absolute shit show. So I would say take the leap, but sometimes it doesn't work out. So this has been a common theme in my life and career, actually. Less so as I've got married and had children, but I've taken risks at times. You've got to weigh those up as best you can, but I've certainly jumped into things, and taken risk. Which is ironic, because we work in cyber and it's risk related, and I have a risk tolerance at a business that I might not have in my other aspects of my life. So I ended up at Just Eat. I did 2 years at Just Eat where the CISO left and I ended up taking his job. That was an amazing experience, huge organisation, $1 billion organisation globally. I had a big team of 26 people. And I got poached for Trustpilot, which is pretty much how it ended up. When I started speaking to Trustpilot, so I've probably given this away too early, I had lots of conversations with people, I had a few more formal interviews, and then the night before that I was meant to be speaking to the CTO, or interviewed by the CTO, as I sent him this message. Hi Steve, we're chatting tomorrow about the CISO role. I don't tend to do this, but I've put together some slides to give you an outline on some of the thoughts on Trustpilot's security journey. Now, I'd had conversations with people about the maturity that they were at, and I had quite a lot of info about what I thought they needed. Now, I had never done this before in my career. I actually thought it was probably a little bit arrogant, to be fair, but I wanted to give him something that said, this is what I think you need. So even if we don't talk again, this is what I think the company needs. I'm just going to go through the slide deck. And the reason I'm going to go through the slide deck is when I show you the team I've built at Trustpilot, it's amazing how they match up. I told them what their risks would be. And this is based on years of working for cloud-based companies. It's fairly simple, right? It was split into these 5 areas, which I'd used at Just Eat. I took a punt on some ideas that I thought they would, certainly GDPR, but perhaps PCI and a few other things. They're an internet site, so they're going to be hit by DDoS, they're going to be hit by malware, the kind of standard stuff. I knew they were running out of AWS, so misconfiguration was going to be a major problem for them, data movement, shadow IT, all the kind of fairly traditional risk things. Because during some of the chats I'd had with people, I didn't think they had even that. So I don't think they visually had something like that. I then gave him a view of what I thought the team would look like, based on what the company needed, the things it needed to cover. And this will be familiar to a lot of you around how to set up these kind of teams, SDLC, SecOps, Cloud Sec Risk. I then gave this outline, I guess, of year 1, year 2, year 3. First year was called Do the Basics. That I was basing off an assumption that they didn't have anything, right? Because they had somebody before me, but no team. I made an assumption that they weren't really doing very much security. So I said, look, these are the things for those teams that you probably need to think about. At a very high level, very kind of high theoretical level. So that was year 1, Do the Basics. I said how many headcount I thought that would take, 4 to 5 people, give or take, to do those things. Then moved on to year 2 to 3, which is automate all the things. Easier said than done. Headcount needed 10 to 12, 12 to 15. I'm old to have 15 people. I've got 9 just now, so I was a little bit out. But the idea was to sort of show the kind of things that a tech company should be doing. I think I was a bit, I think trying to get to purple team in wargaming was probably a bit too soon. I then told them how much it was going to cost. How much do these people in cyber get paid, right? How much does the tooling cost? What are the kind of things that you're going to have to commit to as a CTO in the C-suite? What are the board going to need to think about from a budget point of view? Because you're not getting all this stuff for free. I come at a cost, the team I build comes at a cost, the tooling comes at a cost. I think he was even surprised at the salary side of things that was way beyond what he was expecting. I'm like, well, that's what it is. Yeah, it's a bit more expensive than that when you build some of these things out. Then this is my favourite slide. What pain will there be? What pain is this business going to go through to get to where it needs to get to? The more you see, the more you find. When I first joined Trustpilot, I didn't have a SIEM. I mean, there was endpoint stuff, some SecOps things, but I had no idea what threats were kind of, hitting the business. And by getting that tooling in play, you get to see way more. I touched on things like salaries rising very fast and needing to cope with that, culture change, engineering needing to be dedicated to security roadmaps. What else did I have in here? Pretty much what I've built, frankly. And what he did in that interview, we had the interview the next day, and I had prepped for hours for this interview to try and make sure I was up to speed on everything. And the very first words out of his mouth were, I saw your slide deck, I have no desire to interview you. So when you look at that journey that I've kind of gone through, I've gone from being an analyst, dealing with compliance, InfoSec manager at Skyscanner, where I was a generalist. That was my first foray into building a team and line managing people. I ended up in SecOps and infrastructure at Capital One, security engineering at Photobox, let us never speak of that again, cloud security at Just Eat, the top job at Just Eat, and then the top job at Trustpilot. So I've done a bit of everything, and again, if there's a way for anybody in the room to build some of those skill sets, I would be advised, because that set me up to have a reasonably broad knowledge across the business of things that I need for this mental CISO role. This says 11 things I wish I knew before I joined. There's less than 11, but it was the only meme I could find on Google. I never used to go and join jobs and ask the right questions. I was always quite happy that they picked me, right? And I used to be a bit overawed by it, and then I wouldn't really have asked the right questions before I took the job. And I think that led to a couple of those failed jobs, because if I'd asked the right questions, I would have been set up way better. I would definitely, if you're moving towards CISO roles, ask what the reporting structure is. Who are you going to report into? A company tried to poach me last week where the role was reporting into a VP of engineering, who reports into a CTO, who reports into the CEO, who reports into the board. I'm like, I don't think you need a CISO if it's going to be that far down the chain, right? And that makes it difficult to kind of embed what you need at the highest levels. So reporting structure, where are you going to sit in the hierarchy? How easy is it going to be to influence the people you need to influence? What are your board obligations? Do you have any? Do you need to speak to them? Does somebody else speak to them? At the moment, my boss speaks to the board. I provide all the reporting. He's the person that gets grilled in front of that group of people, which I'm perfectly fine with, because it's a difficult one. But yeah, what are your board obligations? What money do you have, right? If you go into a CISO job and you suddenly find that there's no budget for you, well, how can you do the things that you've said you want to do? What is your current team? What's the team that you're going to take over? Is there a team? What's the structure of it? How's it set up? Difficult, you often won't get this through an interview process, but have they had any previous incidents? They will have. What were they? How catastrophic were they? Because give you an idea of the kind of environment you might be moving into. I hope everyone uses Glassdoor. It's similar to Trustpilot. You get a subjective opinion of what a company's like. Some people leave badly and leave crappy reviews. Generally, though, you'll get a feel for what a company's like and maybe a transition that it's going through if you use Glassdoor. In the way that I would encourage use of Trustpilot. See what I did there? And then what happened to the person that you're replacing? Are you coming in as a CISO because they binned the last CISO? And if they did, why did they bin them? That would definitely help, just in case there's something going on that you want to know about. So you've made it into the job, right? You've got your CISO job, fantastic. You've got to the thing you've been talking about doing. Nobody really talks about the first 90 days for CISOs. Some of these points might be controversial, and I'm happy to take a Q&A if you disagree with them. First thing is I would intro to absolutely everybody in your first 3 months, and I genuinely mean everybody, within reason, depending on the size of the company. Go and speak to finance, HR, product, design, as many people as you can to get a feel for the organisation. It's not just about engineering, it's not just about your risk departments or your natural close stakeholders. Build up a rapport with everybody in those first 90 days, get to know them. Don't change anything, literally, in your first 3 months. That's a mistake pretty much everybody makes going into a job. They feel like they've got to change something quickly. That could be the worst thing to do sometimes, because you've not yet embedded yourself, you don't know the business well enough, you don't know if they've tried it already, you're probably going to wind people up. Don't change anything, unless there's something absolutely on fire, right, that you must deal with. Don't change anything substantial. You can always find quick wins, right? There's always that kind of low-hanging fruit that you can come in and drive. I would use NIST, if anybody's familiar with the NIST framework. It's not perfect, but you can self-score against NIST to a certain degree and give yourself a comfort level of where you think the company's at. Or use an external consultancy to come in and do that. We do that a little bit at Trustpilot. Form allies, fundamentally. That's a massive part of the CISO role, is just being allied to a lot of people in the business. And yeah, I think I mentioned this in the other slide. Understand your spend and budget, because you're probably going to have to do something with that in the second 90 days. Oh, I did this today. Try and understand your team performance. You might be walking into a team where there's some low performers that you may have to deal with. May have to move people on, unfortunately, or find ways to shift your team around. That's one of the downsides. Or, I guess, understanding your high achievers and the people that can really help you when you join. Right. Here's what you're likely to be doing as a CISO, and this is probably going to be not what people expect. Sometimes I sit in spreadsheets all day and people think I sit and write code. So what's going to be expected of you? Fundamentally, strategy. What are you doing? Where are you going to take this thing? What does it mean for the company? Strategically, how are you setting this all up? What's it going to cost us? You're going to be building teams, if you're lucky enough to have enough budget to do it, but you're certainly going to be dealing with recruitment. That doesn't even just mean your own team. You're going to be interviewing as part of other parts of the business as a senior person. Recruitment's a big part of, frankly, most roles in business, but certainly at the more senior levels. Quite a lot of mentoring and guiding your own team, but other people in the business. You'll do a lot on budgets, and procurement of tooling and renewing things and saving money on stuff, and yeah, that's where you'll be signing spreadsheets for hours a day. Lots of reporting. We're a tech company, so we're not that heavy on it, but I do a quarterly board report. I do various other things for the business. And quite a lot of evangelism, just generally speaking to people, speaking in all hands, doing workshops, you know, quite a lot of just generally speaking. And driving growth for the business, quite aligned to commercial. And then dealing with the crappy stuff. I'm afraid the higher that you go up in business, the less of the nice stuff you get to deal with. I'm afraid you get to deal with lots of people-related issues and behaviours and things that aren't as nice. And as a security professional, you deal with incidents that are not very pleasant sometimes. I might go into a couple if we've got time, the ones I'm allowed to talk about. Sadly, there's a whole stack of misconceptions for me about what a CISO should and shouldn't be. It bores me to tears on LinkedIn, the amount of people that talk about technical CISOs and what CISOs should be doing. Again, this is just my opinion. This is probably what you won't be doing, apologies. You shouldn't be really coding very much as a CISO, because I don't think you're a CISO if you're coding all day. You're probably a principal engineer or a senior architect, and that's amazing. But if you sit and code for 8 hours a day, I'm not convinced you're a CISO. That one doesn't go down well on LinkedIn when you say that, right? You're probably not going to be building very much for that same reason. Even at Just Eat, when I was head of cloud security, I didn't really build very much in cloud. It was about strategizing and building a team to fix things. You won't be investigating many incidents at a very deep level as a CISO. You might have a higher level view of what's happened and need to make some decisions, but you're unlikely to be in the weeds of data. You'll almost never deliver a project. It's firefighting 100 different things at any point in time. You don't necessarily get the nice end point of a project delivery where you can go and have your celebration afterwards. You're unlikely to be laying low and hiding, which people can do in their career sometimes. You've got to be out there as a CISO. These slides take forever to go on. Right, I'm going to talk a bit about how I strategize. This is going into a bit of the theory about how I run the team, how I deliver work, how I kind of get shit done. That's my current team structure, okay? When I reflect back to that thing that I sent the CTO, it's not far off at all. It's a platform security team, so that's a combination of application security and cloud security. And the reason we do that is that everything is code. So whether it's the code of the product or infrastructure as code, we deal with it strategically all the same way. So I've got 3 people running that. That's quite heavy. That's everything in AWS. All our applications run in AWS. We've got all of our data lake in GCP. I've got 100 plus SaaS platforms that the company uses, just in general. Salesforce, Zendesk, Jira, whatever. Right? They still need to be thought about when it comes to the platform. I've got 4 people in SecOps. We run out of Google Chronicle. We're very much trying to build a SOC-less SOC where everything is automated. A human being doesn't have to make a decision. There's an event, and then a SOAR will deal with that and take an action based off that event, and we get the data at the end of that. And then I've got a sort of small but at some point growing risk and compliance function. We're dealing with SOC 2 and GDPR and a few other things. So it's amazing for me to look at, I'm 3 years in, so if I think back to that slide, end of year 3, I didn't quite get to 15, I got to 9. But the structure of the team is pretty similar to what I was expecting. And then for those of you that use Jira, if anybody's using it, I use Jira. Almost everything I do goes into Jira, the same as anybody else, so my team can see it. I'm very transparent about what I'm doing. The only things that don't go in there are very sensitive things, but it means my team can see what I'm up to. They can question it. It's visible for the business. So I use Jira the same as anybody else. My Kanban is far less exciting than my team's. They do really good work. I was going to do a bit about the board. I don't report into the board anymore, but I did for a year and a half. And it's a fascinating experience. These are the smartest people on the planet, right? They're execs on a public company board, right? I've got people from Facebook, I've got ex-Facebook execs, CEO of notonthehighstreet.com, smartest cookies on the planet. But they obviously don't know cybersecurity, and I don't expect them to. So I used to get 20 minutes a quarter. They would get a pre-read report, and then I've got my 20 minutes in front of them. How can I in any way articulate the things that we're doing in 20 minutes to a group of people who don't understand cybersecurity? It's almost impossible. And I don't think I really succeeded at it. That's a real journey to get people in that time frame to understand why you're doing what you're doing, without using a whole load of terminology that they don't understand. And you'll hear a lot about, speaking the board's language and this kind of thing. What does that even mean? I get 20 minutes in front of these people. I don't sit with them for hours. I found board stuff really difficult, intimidating. They ask very strange questions because they aren't aware of the subject matter. So how do you prep for a question that you don't know is coming? And if you can find me a CISO that finds it comfortable, then let me know. One thing I've got used to is everything being on fire. I've been quite happy about it. I really enjoy my job, and it's got stressful points, I'm sure. But everything's on fire. I've nicked this from the CISO series, which is really good if you want a good podcast to listen to. You've got to get comfortable with the fact that loads of stuff's on fire all the time. Sorry to alienate half the room who don't watch Match of the Day. I'm going to do too good, too bad. There are 1,000 reasons why being a CISO is amazing. I feel like the luckiest person on the planet to do the job that I do. I feel very fortunate to do it for a living, get paid to do it. And there's 1,000 things that are really difficult with it. I don't want to spend too much time on either, but I was just going to do a couple for too good, too bad. This is something I've just done. I've managed to change the whole culture of my business in 3 years. Nobody was talking security when I joined, and now they're all talking about it, and it's front and centre of the strategy of the business. And if I move on at some point, that's what I've embedded for the company, and hopefully they can carry that on. That's really powerful, right? That's from a personal point of view and career point of view, there's a buzz attached to that, right? That's why people who get to CISO levels tend to kind of stick there, because they like the buzz attached with that power that comes with the change you can make to a business. And you can change the career trajectory of very smart people. I've hired people at junior level who I watch go on to really, really great jobs after that initial entry into the company. It's amazing to have given them that opportunity, watch them grow, be part of that career growth as individuals. Again, there's a buzz attached with that. You can help them on their journey, hopefully teach them things. And then the not so good. It's stressful, tiring, and you don't get any thanks for it, unfortunately. And that's not just CISO roles, the C-suite, everything around the C-suite and higher level leadership, you don't really get much thanks for it. We're not all having beers in the pub after work. It doesn't really work like that. You just tend to deal with quite a lot of crap, and that's how it is, I'm afraid. This is the one that worries me. I live with a constant fear that my name will be in the press if Trustpilot is hacked, and it almost certainly won't be my fault as an individual. It will be a mistake or something happened to the business that, in hindsight, I may or may not have been able to do something about, but it's unlikely to have been my personal fault, unless I've been not doing my job properly. And I don't get paid enough money to be in the press, frankly, for the impact that would have to my career and my family and my stress levels. And I don't think there's a sum of money that does make that comfortable, frankly. So I live with that kind of constant fear. One thing you're going to have to get used to as a CISO is you're going to deal with really sensitive stuff. And I mean, people leaving businesses quickly, exceptionally sensitive incidents that do not go beyond a very small group of people. I've dealt with office closures and redundancies, and I've known things about people knowing the impact it's going to have to their lives without being able to tell them that that's happening. In fact, having to sit in one-to-ones with them and not being able to tell them what's about to to come, right? Because of how sensitive it is, and that's difficult, right? There's a burden attached to that. It's not me that's having to deal with the impact of that. It's a poor bugger that's losing their job or being moved on. There's a level of comfort you've got to get used to being privy to that information. And that's how it is, right? That's the kind of thing that you're going to get involved in at the very senior levels. So one thing that's worked for me is I built a small leadership team. That little layer I had in there, my head of SecOps and head of governance. And there's two things I'm trying to do with those people is I'm trying to elevate them to become CISOs if they want to become CISOs, so that if I move on, that there are people that can take over, or if I'm ill or whatever. And secondly, I confide in those people. I can, when I'm allowed to, share information with them that wouldn't go any wider than that. And that's a massive support, actually, to have other individuals who you can lean on a little bit, maybe just take some of the heat off or some of the stress in a certain scenario. So building good people around you who you trust can be fantastic. There are two character traits that I believe in massively as a CISO. They are resilience. As I said, I lost my hearing last year, 60-70% of it. I've had to be as resilient as hell to carry on doing the job I'm doing under the circumstances. I'm back public speaking. I'm doing all the things I did before because screw it, right? What's the alternative? But that's because I'm resilient. I'm trying to teach my kids to be resilient. You're going to need to be very resilient as a CISO because you're going to get dumped on all the time and deal with those sensitive things. And the second one is empathy. And empathy stretches to your team, your colleagues, the business. Sorry, was that a question or was that just a hi?
No, that's not a question.
Cool. I saw this today, so I added it in on LinkedIn. Being easy to work with is a massively underrated career skill. When I was a younger man, I had this impression that you needed to be aggressive to get to leadership or sort of not be able to be the person that you normally are, right? You've got to pretend to be something else, and I actually think that's complete nonsense. I have a mantra that is what you see is what you get. I speak to the same at work that I would in the pub, same that I do to a certain extent with my friends, but there's a level where I don't change as an individual. Sure, I'm not turning up to the board looking like this, but I don't pretend to be another individual when I'm in certain circumstances. There's an element of being able to agree to disagree with people and be perfectly nice about it and just get things moving in a business. You don't have to have all this friction all the time. You can be easy to work with. It doesn't have to be carnage. So, look, I don't know what time we're on. I've probably waffled way too long.
Well, go 10 minutes.
Cool. I have 5 tips for being a CISO if you so desire.
5 maybe, yeah. 5
minutes. Cool. I'm probably not too far from the end.
Alright, cool.
So these have worked for me, and again, you can take it as advice or otherwise. I built a brand over quite a long period of time. I built an internal brand. I built an internal brand in the companies that I work for. Again, I built those allies, and people get to know me as an individual and how I go about doing things. And I built one externally, and the reason I built one externally is not because I want people to read my LinkedIn brain farts. It's because it helps me build teams of cool people, because I share things and they seem to be attracted to the sharing of information, and they get to know you via some of that. So it's really helpful for me in building teams. It's not for everybody. I'm not suggesting you all have to be out there on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, but it's certainly helped for me. I guess this is a question I get asked a lot. What is it you do here? I still meet people in Trustpilot who have really no idea what security is. As a CISO, certainly, you've got to articulate the value of what you're doing. It's not just the technical aspects of things you're fixing or moving forward. What value is it bringing to the business? Is it driving commercial sales for the business? Is it reducing risk? Is it dealing with a threat? Is it a compliance or a legal requirement? You've got to be able to talk in that way to a whole stack of people who don't understand what you do. And that, when we come to the board level, that's really difficult. I get asked, well, historically got asked by the board, they wanted a dashboard. Have we got a dashboard? What, just one dashboard that sort of shows a RAG status of security? Well, it doesn't really work like that. Then they wanted KPIs. Well, what KPIs am I going to deliver? Because incidents going up doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means we're finding more things, right? It's like, yeah, I could talk for hours on how difficult that is. But you've got to try and sell yourself and prove the value. Again, these are mantras for my existence and my life as opposed to just my career. Be nice, be kind. Work should be fun, right? Why do you have to have so much aggression and friction to do a job, right? You can do it by being a nice individual. I got told earlier in my career that wasn't possible, and it has been possible. So you can achieve these things by being a good individual. Big one for me, I'm doing a talk at InfoSec next month on this. You've got to look after yourself. I'm not being preachy about it. I have my vices like everybody. It's a stressful job. I've burnt out twice in my career, once for a shitty boss and once for my hearing. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So look after yourself, right? Look after your well-being, look after your mental health. In all cyber roles, actually. It's not just senior ones. They're stressful at every level. I think there's a lot can be done. I've got a whole load of data I'm going to use in the talk at InfoSec, which is frightening, the amount of stats on people who've been burnt out, suffer mental health issues related to their job in cyber. It shouldn't be that way. You should be excited to be in the careers that you're in, or want the careers that you want to come into if you're studying it just now. I've got 2 young kids, and that's just my morning every morning. That's just how it is. And then build your network. I'm in a WhatsApp group of 50 other CISOs, and it's this wonderful, cathartic, kind of whinging environment where we just kind of share information and let our hair down a little bit. I post on LinkedIn a lot. I engage with a lot of other security people. I do these things. I run community stuff in Edinburgh mostly. And it just helps me learn. It's the only way I can learn things. Yeah, I can watch talks and I can read books, but engaging with people and networking in the very old school sense, physically, has been really valuable for me. I would encourage anybody to kind of do that. So look, some takeaways. Taking risks. It's worked for me. It might not be for everybody. But I believe in risk-taking in your career and life, because I think you never know what will happen. I don't think I'd be where I am today without doing that. Try and have some eyes open to what you might be stepping into, ask the right questions, get as much information as you can going into the jobs that you go into. Build your brand internally at the company, externally if you want to. Absorb literally everything from every part of the business, everything externally, everybody you meet. Take it all in, and then you've got to get to know business as a CISO. I do as much non-security work as security work these days, helping in various other streams of work, and it's like I have to know a bit about everything across the business. I'm going to leave you this slide that I leave everybody with at every talk is you're either all working in cybersecurity or you want to work in cybersecurity. We are all fundamentally doing a really, really important thing for society without getting too romantic about it. We're trying to make the internet safer for the next generation. Yes, generating money for businesses at the same time, right? But it's shaping what the online world's going to become in the years to come. And that's powerful, right? And we should all be really enthused by the work that we do. So I just want to say that you're all, I was going to swear then, sorry. You're all amazing. Carry on doing what you're doing. Keep connecting. Keep going to these things because you're honestly changing the world for generations to come. Thank you for listening to me. Honestly, it's amazing to speak to people. Thank you for coming out.